Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to Ugly Like Me on MS&Me Radio, sponsored by the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. Say that 10 times super fast and see how difficult it is. We want to give a special shout out to Erica, who's our station manager, and she's always supporting us. I don't think she ever sleeps, and she dreams big, and she supports me every day. So big shout out to her and everybody on the other side that help us. This is Jamie Tributitis, and with me today, give me a woo. Do we know the woo? Aw, the woo's not working. Well, woo, because with me today is Scott Woolman.
Woo! It is my pleasure to be here.
Aw, thank you so much for being here, Scott. So I'm filled with so many questions, but let's start out with the basics.
Hopefully I'm filled with answers.
You're always filled with answers and poetry. And I think poetry is probably what connected us.
Yeah, well, we started talking, I guess, through other friends, and then the poetry connected us a little bit more.
And then we found out we sort of had something else in common.
Illness.
Fun stuff. So what was your fun illness?
Mine was cancer.
Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of cancer you had?
Yes, I had testicular cancer in 1999, had surgery.
Can I say it is such a blessing that you said I had cancer in 1999 and that was like, that it stopped there. That is a blessing, and I'm giving a big shout out to the universe. I don't have a woohoo button for you, universe, but that's good. It's past tense.
Yes, it's past tense. We still have to keep an eye on things. I go into the city to Sloan Kettering every year. I have to do self-examinations and what have you, but it's in the past, and hopefully that's where it will stay.
Amen. So you know what? I was just reminded of something when I thought of testicular cancer, and I'm not sure if you remember this. So I'm gonna play you something, and I don't know, audience and you alike, tell me if you know what this is. I actually forgot about him.
Tom Green, is that
it? Is.
Yes.
You remember it?
I remember watching the episode on television where he went through the surgery and he was in the hospital, and yeah, I'm not a fan of his, but I followed the episode because we had that in common.
Yeah. I bet you it was probably about the same time.
Yeah, I think he had it a few years after me. Because otherwise I wouldn't have paid attention to it, not having any experience with it. So I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 years after I had it.
I wonder how he's doing now.
I assume he's fine.
I don't think his comedic acting career is going so well.
Well, I'm not really sure it was ever going that way.
Ha. Yes, that is debatable. That is debatable. So, I have so many questions for you. You might be asking, why is Scott, with testicular cancer on Jamie's MS show? But the whole point of Ugly Like Me is that not everyone has MS, but everybody has something. And we use these uglies, these things that are deemed ugly by probably generations before us mostly, to empathize and to connect with others. And really, there are a lot of connections. And one of those is being told that you have something terrible. So do you remember like the moment you were diagnosed and then like somebody actually said that word to you and that you had it?
Oh, I definitely remember. I kind of suspected anyway because I saw indications. Basically, my left testicle exploded in size in like hours. So I suspected something, and then you go on the internet and you start to read.
Did it physically hurt?
It didn't hurt. It was uncomfortable because something is suddenly much bigger in a place where it's not supposed to be that big. So when I went to the doctor that Monday morning, I kind of like was concerned and a little bit scared about what he was going to say. But there's also that part of you that I think hopes, oh, he's not going to, it's, you're overreacting. It's nothing. Go away. And, he put me through the hoops and everything. And then, he was great with a knife, my doctor, as I would find out afterwards. But he just sat across from me at his desk and said, "You have cancer." And just kept a straight face, didn't continue the sentence by saying, "But here's the, what."
Here's the hopeful part. This is the best kind of cancer you could have, or something like nothing. He just stared at you and said, "You have cancer."
He just said, "You have cancer." I got emotional. I cried briefly. And then I remember the nurse outside when they were scheduling me for the surgery and everything. She patted me on the shoulder and was comforting because it's almost in all my experiences, I've had almost every type of doctor over the years this side of a gynecologist. And it's always been, I've had some great doctors, but I've always had wonderful nurses. And they really are the heroes in medicine in a lot of cases. And I remember the nurse being very comforting. And later I found out the so-called good news of testicular cancer, 98% cure rate, what to look for after the surgery, and what would be involved. But his initial reaction was just, "You have cancer," and didn't say anything.
What about when you cried?
It was the release. I think...
Did he like move or bat an eye at the fact that you were crying?
No, he sat there and looked at me.
That had to feel really much better. And in addition to having cancer, this man staring at you while you cry.
I think I stopped noticing after the initial reaction, because then your mind is going a million different directions. Am I going to die? What does this mean? What are they going to do to me? I had no idea. Surgery. I didn't have chemo, but you're thinking right away, surgery, chemo, radiation, how much time I'm going to miss from work. Of course, we're trained in our society now to worry about work instead of our health. Yeah. But my mind started going in so many different directions at that point that he disappeared after the initial reaction of not having any reaction on his part.
Yeah, thank God for that. How after that experience, like how often did you have to interact with this particular doctor?
Well, he was there for the surgery, and actually my mother literally put him up against the wall before I came out of anesthesia to find out which type of testicular cancer I had, because that increased the chances of not having it spread. So she got him to tell her what type it was. And my mother told me before he came to me. I saw him for maybe 2 minutes after I came out of it, and he realized I was awake. And I don't even recall if there was a follow-up visit. It might have been very brief.
Wait, so you went in under the knife without knowing what stage of testicular cancer. Are you comfortable?
Yeah,
do you want this behind you? Okay. There's a pill right here if you want it. So you went in there not knowing what stage cancer you had?
You really can't until they cut the cancer out of you and send it up to the lab for testing. There's no way to know. So I didn't know which type I had, seminoma or non-seminoma, or what stage of development it was in until the lab looked it over.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. For me, I think you don't get a treatment plan unless until you know what you're treating, but I guess I understand that. So what stage were you at?
I was 1B, so I pretty much caught it right away. 2 hospitals said I had minor vascular infiltration. 1 said there was none. So I literally caught it almost the second it happened.
You know what's crazy is that you know what I knew before I knew anything about your cancer, the thing that I knew about you was that you loved coffee ice cream, and that like I remember, you traveled. I know that you're going to Africa, but all these things I've known about you before I ever knew that you were a cancer survivor. And it's just amazing that you kept that inside, and you still smile and you're still happy. I wouldn't say you're in denial.
I think, you know, if you look at me, you can't see that I had testicular cancer. You can't see any of the health issues that I deal with. I deal with spinal issues for my back and neck. For the most part, you don't see any of those things. And if you follow me on Facebook or you have conversations with me, it's not necessarily going to come up. I suppose the only time stuff like that really comes up, and on Facebook maybe, when I have my annual visit to Sloan Kettering, I'll post another year of getting grabbed and getting a clean bill of health. February 5th is the day I had the surgery, so I celebrate that as the anniversary of being cancer free. So every February 5th, I'll say something. Otherwise, unless it comes up in some form of conversation or a joke opportunity presents itself, because testicular cancer is great for humor.
It is, that is, yeah. When people call you ballsy, you always say ball.
Well,
What ball?
balls. Then I say, no, sorry, ball.
I think that's pretty funny. Yeah.
Actually, when I told my office that I had cancer, I worked in government, and the office that I worked for, I don't want to get into politics, but the office I worked for was very Republican, and they knew I was a Democrat and I leaned to the left, and it was a left testicle. So I told them, just because I was going to be leaning a little bit more to the right doesn't mean I'm going to be leaning a little bit more to the right. And that sort of broke the tension a little bit, and it's my way of dealing with stuff. I like the Hawkeye Pierce from MASH while the bombs are dropping, tell a joke.
Oh, that is so awesome.
And that's how I approach it.
Because I was going to say, it's testicular. Like, that's so private. Like, I don't know. But then I think about breast cancer, and breast cancer is so spoken about, and it's not seen almost as a private part, but it is a private part. But testicles just seem more private to me. Like, people don't talk about them. Was that weird, having that type, like sharing that with people, saying testicular to people, or being seen constantly, just having to show them? I don't know.
It's strange, because for me it was never uncomfortable, because it was a health thing. So then like I said, part of it was I had a free reign to tell jokes, and part of it was just like I had cancer. So this is the story. But I was trained by American Cancer Society to be a mentor for other people with testicular cancer, for other men, obviously, with testicular cancer. And they said, you're probably not going to ever get to use these skills, because especially younger guys are embarrassed talking about it. And it is true, most of them are. But for some reason, it just never bothered me. I didn't get hung up on that. And I had testicular cancer. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
And if not, we don't talk about it. Yeah. And I guess I never asked you, so we never talked about it. But, there's one thing that we talked about earlier, and it just popped into our conversation. Early on in my MS, I did this thing where I was like, would I rather have cancer and know exactly, what type of cancer I had, and knew I had a chance to beat it, and then to be free of it for the rest of my life? Or would I rather have this long lasting illness where I had time to say goodbye to loved ones and live my life a little longer, whatever, but knowing that I'd have some degenerative illness and ultimately I would go in a weird way? And it was always this wrestling thing inside me. But lately I've realized, especially through survivors, like, people who have survived cancer, you're never really free of it. Like, even if you quote unquote beat it, I mean, you always have these 5-year tests to see if it's come back. A lot of people who have gone through chemo and or radiation, they have side effects from that, where health effects that they feel every single day, and they talk about that. Any thoughts on that, on being free of cancer? Like, do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me?
Well, with the cancer, yeah. Like, every year I go into Sloan Kettering, and I tend to not worry, because getting back to the coffee ice cream, I know I'll stop in at Penn Station Haagen-Dazs and get coffee ice cream.
Always the ice
So I'm focused on that when I go in for my cancer exam. I'm strange, but at this point now, when I go into Sloan, I don't really think about it. But yeah, I am more prone now to colon cancer because of the radiation. So I have to go for colonoscopies every 5 years.
Why does radiation, like, what's the connection between the radiation and colon cancer? Like, why?
Because they radiated my abdomen. I have 5 or 6 little dots on my abdomen area, basically, that are permanent tattoos. And I was colored in, basically, for a month. And I went to radiation after work every day for 17 sessions. So radiation in the abdomen, because that's where testicular cancer is most prone to spread initially.
Okay, so then they had to shoot there, and then it compromised other things.
Yeah, so colon cancer is a direction, because now I'm told they don't do the radiation as quickly as they did back then. Maybe the colon cancer is part of the reason, but I am more prone to that as a result of the radiation. So that's always in the back of my mind, I guess, is that possible. And, you get an ache somewhere. Before you have an illness of any kind, you have an ache, it's an ache. Once you have an illness, you have an ache, and it means something is happening with your illness. In my case, the cancer's coming back. Maybe in your case, the MS is progressing.
Right.
So the slight you sneeze, it means something different than beforehand.
Amen. I was just telling my friend, I wasn't sure if MS has actually made me a hypochondriac, because for a long time I thought something was wrong, and people would say that I was crazy and there was nothing wrong, or I had this or that, and I was just a hysterical female is pretty much how I felt they perceived me. But then, like, one day, finally they agreed and they were wrong and I was right. There was something wrong. So now every time I feel something, I question it, and someone says there's nothing, like, oh, don't worry about it, whatever. Well, why? Like, I freak out over it. Like, of course you should test it, because once I said there was something wrong and you thought I was nuts, and it turns out I was right. There was something wrong. So I totally, absolutely get that. I might be a hypochondriac.
I've become better. I mean, I remember the first month or two after my radiation was done, I was positive it had spread to the other testicle. Positive. And I was checking myself like every 5 seconds. So I don't think people wanted to be out in public with me, because here I have my hand in my pants every 5 minutes. But you get better at it. At least for me it was, because I'm not dealing with it every day.
Right.
But it's still always there. And if your stomach hurts really badly, do I have cancer in my abdomen now? So it is always there for you. But to get to your original point, I think that it's never really a good thing to get into which would I rather have, the disease or illness that I have, or the disease or illness that someone else has. I think what you have is what you have, and deal with it the best way you can. Yours might be worse than someone's, yours might be better than someone's, however you define better and worse. But it is what it is, and I try not to say, oh, I wish I had that instead of this, or I wish I had, whatever. Just, this is what I had.
Yeah.
So this is it.
And you know what? It also works in the same way, where you almost felt like you had it easy, like you didn't have the right to feel what you felt, because your type of cancer was, the less painful, or less whatever.
Invasive, and yeah, I had a lot of guilt where.
It's almost like a survivor's guilt.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's survivors, but it was like, I had an easier road. It's like I only had to jog like 1 mile, and everyone else I felt had to do 20.
So you had no right to be tired.
Yeah, so if I was with someone who had breast cancer, or if I was with someone who had, whatever other cancer it was, I felt, well, I had the 98% cure rate cancer,
Right.
and I had one surgery. I was back at work a week later. I had radiation. Yeah, that was not fun, but I didn't have chemo. So I always, I did have guilt that I had the easier cancer.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I would tell people I had cancer, but.
Exactly. I think that the greatest thing to remember is that whatever you're feeling, it's 100% to you. And also, I've had friends, a friend with follicular cancer, which is about 90% cure rate, who passed within a year. So, I mean, uh, there are those 2%ers, and whatever you're feeling, it's 100% to you. I know that we're running out of time, Scott, so I wanted to make sure that I got to the poem that you wrote for me, and this might be like right about the time that I learned that you had cancer, but you wrote a poem, and it's posted on uglylikeme.typepad.com, because we really are a blog before we became a broadcast. Can you read that? You wrote it for me, but I've never heard you read it to me. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, since fortunately we have it on a computer screen where I could see it, because my arms are shrinking as I get older. But it is called The Girl with MS, and here it goes. And this is for Jamie.
Thank you, Scott.
The girl with MS is much more than that. Narrow description one learns over time. Still, introduction, a place to begin. The girl with MS inspires my own strength, smiles when faced with life, yet weakness revealed, and that is okay. The girl with MS teaches me courage, also frailty, needing love, support, a family and a community, and those she touches with her charm, wisdom, goofiness, spirit. The girl with MS is much more than that. The world can see her, learning bountiful, blessed principles, being someone with or without MS.
Aw, we don't even have an aw button or a woohoo button.
Yeah, nothing's working here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's so beautiful. Do you want to?
I'm glad you appreciate it.
I really do. And you know what part touches me the most is when you acknowledge that the part about frailty, that I am about speaking about other things that people might see as weaknesses, and I talk about them and maybe talk about them to death. I wear my infusions on my sleeve is what I say, but if it gets people writing and it creates art like you just did, then amen. Amen.
Yes, and you mentioned one time when we were talking that your blog is called Ugly Like Me, and that someone didn't necessarily understand what that meant. It's not saying that you're ugly, and it's not saying that any of us are ugly because of our illnesses or diseases or whatever, mental health issues. It's just saying that we are all in this together, kind of, and we're all normal or part of society or whatever it is, just like everybody else. And we all have our stuff, and there it is. Yes.
I'm glad you get that, because many people don't get that. Many people think I'm like the self-deprecating person who thinks she's ugly, and I'm really not self-deprecating. And it upsets me when other people diss themselves. What I'm saying is we all just have these things that the world, especially generations before us, wouldn't share. They would hide them. They would see them as shameful. There's nothing shameful in getting sick. I can relate to you because you were sick. I can relate to your strength. I draw from it. It gives me courage. I also learned from you eating coffee ice cream. You really pay attention to the beautiful parts of life, the simple parts.
I think you learn when you have MS or you have cancer or you have anything. You either do learn or you really should try to learn to enjoy the little things, the so-called smell of the roses. And I eat coffee ice cream like it's the most important thing in the world when I have it.
He really, really does.
And if there's an otter video on that Jamie and I can share, it's the best video in the world when we're watching it.
Oh, we love otters. Did you know that otters, when they fall asleep, they hold hands so that they don't float away from each other? And I think that is the most beautiful, sweetest thing. So that's what inspired me to love otters. What about you? Was there a reason why you started that?
I just think they're adorable. I love watching animal programs. And it's funny, one last story. When I went for radiation, it was down in the basement of Riverview Hospital in Red Bank. And you get to know the techs. And I went in there one day and they said, we're having this conversation all day what kind of animal would you be if you came back as an animal? And I immediately said otter. And they said, you've thought about this before, haven't you?
'Cause you knew right away.
Yes.
I would say otter, and I would be holding your hand, drifting to sleep with you. Amen to that. Otters are cool.
Otters rock.
They really, really do. And every morning, like not every morning, but many mornings, I wake up and I'm cranky or whatever. But then I'll open up Facebook and I'll have an otter picture from Scott, and sometimes those otters are what get me going.
Otters are a good way to get through any troubled times.
Amen.
They should be like they are in hospitals and doctors' offices to interact with the patients.
Exactly.
So an otter in every hospital.
Amen to that. So, do you want to tell if anybody wants to reach out to you, if they have any stories? Do you want to share your Instagram or your Twitter handle or anything like that?
On Facebook is Scott Wallman, Wolman, not the Scott Wallman who lives in LA, the Scott Wallman who lives in Freehold. And you can also check out my blog that has a lot of poetry, which is Poetic Leanings, and just Google Poetic Leanings and you'll find me.
Amen to that. And once again, you guys know you can always find me on Twitter at Jamie, Jamie, Ugly Like Me. You can also find my blog, uglylikeme.typepad.com. And you can also, what else is there? Did I say? Oh, Instagram. And that's just Jamie Utitis, actually. U, T as in Tom, I, T as in Tom, U-S. Also, we were doing a promo this week where if you like MS&Me Radio, their Facebook page, just click like and then go over to Ugly Like Me's Facebook page, the fan page, and like that. If you like both, the first 5 likes get a free signed copy of Zoe Bowie Sings Despite All Sad Things. I'll send them out to you. And then the next 5, I will actually just give a shout out to somebody that you love. Just make sure that it's not obscene. Keep it clean, because remember that kind of rhymes. I'm a poet. I didn't even know it. Just don't be obscene. Keep it clean, because there are kids on here who struggle with illness every day, just like we do, and we keep it clean for them and for the otters, because keep it clean for the otters. And just know that we love you, and everybody is dealing with something, and that's what connects us to each other. And we're praying that you use whatever you're going through to help somebody, to connect to somebody, to love somebody. And if you don't have anybody loving you or holding you up, you can always find us here on YouTube playing back for you. So signing out, sending love and light. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here.
It was my pleasure.
Peace, 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 peace.